What is good for poor and middle income children are well-funded, equitable public schools that address the whole child.
Nikhil Goyal, a sociologist at UVM and a former senior policy advisor to Senator Bernie Sanders on education and youth issues, is one of many in Vermont paying close attention to Governor Phil Scott's calls for a dramatic transformation of the public education system. Goyal's mindful of Vermonters' property tax pressures.
It is a crisis
that have forced the intense conversations inside the State House.
I completely understand and respect what voters declared in November. We should be absolutely cognizant of that, but we got to do it in a way that is smart, that is equitable, and that is not going to undermine the foundation of the most important institution in our society, and that is public education.
The governor wants to remake the school funding model, establishing a single education tax rate for properties statewide.
This starts with setting a base amount that will be distributed equally for all students, so that kids in Sudbury get the same quality as kids in Stowe.
He's also calling for the current 119 school districts to be combined into just 5 regional bodies, each with subject matter experts supporting their own zone. The administration says this would dramatically increase efficiency and reduce overhead costs.
Parents and locals will continue to be involved through school advisory councils, where they can focus on the things that matter most to kids and communities, instead of defending difficult budget choices year after year. This change puts us much more in line with other states, many of which have better outcomes and most of which have lower costs. With this larger scale, districts can be creative and flexible. In contrast, right now, when looking for savings, the only option is to cut. In some schools, cuts mean one less academic coach. In others, cuts mean an entire educational program. This is not equal education. We can and must do better.
What would that do, in your view, to Vermont's long-held tradition of local control over education?
It's an important question. The foundation of public education is local control, that parents and families should have influence and input on how their children are educated. And that is perhaps most prominent right here in Vermont, especially in communities that cherish their local public school. That is a cornerstone of their community. It's a place where they send generations upon generations of children year after year. So I understand the deep and personal attachment that those communities have to their public school, and it's not just, and it's also on the sense of building citizenship. It's a way we form citizens when people are directly engaged in the operation of their local school, even if they don't have children in that school. So I have some concerns about a mass consolidation approach around administrative operations, but there could be some areas to trim the number of supervisory unions, and I think we could address that through what the governor is talking about around overhead and some administrative positions and the like. The question is, what exactly does that look like? What are the numbers? How many people are going to get laid off? And those details have not fully been released. And so I think the public deserves some clear understanding about what is this going to do to my local supervisory union. So that is something that I think we're still waiting to see.
One aspect of the proposal would involve increasing class sizes.
Many high-performing schools throughout the country are larger with bigger classes and higher ratios.
It really did put teaching and learning first.
Consultant Nate Levinson is a former school superintendent and school board member who partnered with the Vermont Education Agency to analyze possible outcomes from the governor's proposals.
Vermont's got some of the smallest classes in the country. I've worked in 30 states. I've just never seen anything quite like Vermont classes. And it's unfortunate that the research and your own experience says these very small classes have not actually improved outcomes. I was talking to a school board member of a Vermont district last week, and they said, it's kind of weird. We have only 9 kids in our first grade classroom, and more than half of them do not read on grade level. That's as small a class as you would see almost anywhere in this country, and that is not a particularly great outcome. Where I get more concerned as well is that small classes in Vermont have reduced teacher pay. You do not pay your teachers particularly well. And the money that is going into small classes, the research said would have been more effective going into better teacher pay. That's why in my model, I pay the teachers more. It's also limited the dollars available for mental health, academic support, and career readiness. So, and weirdly enough, again, looking at the Vermont context, the other thing that made me very nervous is you need a lot of teachers because of the small classes, but because of the low pay, you don't have enough people who want to be teachers in Vermont.
What would we expect if we were to increase class sizes?
Yes, it is definitely true that Vermont has, on average, smaller class sizes than the rest of the country. But that is a good thing. It is a good thing that we have small class sizes across the board. In many respects, Vermont class sizes mirror that of private schools. I've spent a lot of time in some of these very expensive private schools doing research and observing, and they care deeply about small classes and having strong, meaningful relationships between students, teachers, and staff. So I think we need to start from that principle. If it's good for wealthy kids, then it's probably very good for poor working class kids who are attending rural schools in Vermont. That doesn't mean that there are some examples where we have just a handful of students in a classroom and we could increase that by a few students. There are situations where that might occur. But the research is very clear on this. Smaller class sizes have positive impacts on student achievement, student engagement. They increase the high school graduation rates and as well as college attendance rates. They are beneficial for students across the board, but particularly for low-income students and students of color. That's where we see the biggest gains when we have smaller class sizes.
We know this transition won't be easy, which is why the Agency of Education will be on the ground, helping districts along the way. And I propose $4 million to support them. We'll also take a phased-in approach, implementing this over 4 years. We'll give administrators and school boards evidence-based backstops for school and class size and graduation requirements. We'll make changes so the impact on tax rates is easier to understand for taxpayers and for those who build these budgets.
You have experience as a policy advisor in the office of Senator Sanders. Be a policy advisor on this issue. How would you recommend policymakers approach this very complicated topic?
Sure. I think we need to start with the understanding that public education is the bedrock and foundation of American democracy, that all children should have the opportunity to attend well-funded, equitable public schools that cherish their talents and abilities and prepare them for higher education, for career, and for citizenship. What we need to recognize is how do we build a system that is going to attend to the needs and the diverse needs of students, parents, and educators. So there's obviously a major discussion in the state around the quality of public education and how we might find some cost savings. There's one way we could approach this, which is the governor's approach, which is mass consolidation, centralization, essentially laying off a significant bulk of the education workforce. I think there are some real dangers to approach that disregards the people that keep our schools running, that educate our children, and that make sure that all children are prepared for life after high school. Or we could have an approach that is fundamentally about how do we invest in community schools and equitable opportunities to expand students' abilities to learn and thrive in the classroom.
There will be something in this bill for just about everyone to dislike, maybe even hate. There will be campaigns and protests from special interests. The critics say headlines will circulate in papers and online. Many community members who begged for cost savings will petition against some of this change. We know all that and more is headed our way. But even so, I can tell you I'm ready to take this on, because this is our moment. If we seize this opportunity, we can offer a world-class public education for every student, no matter where they live. Build a system that attracts more families, prepare students for valuable careers, contributing to a strong workforce, and support stronger communities in all corners of our state. That's what we can achieve this session. So let's be brave together and get it done.
We've got to understand what is going to benefit children and families, while understanding that we need to find cost savings in some areas. I think there's ways to approach this in collaboration with educators. That's the group that seems to be completely left out of this policy debate. And I mentioned this is it seems very top-down oriented. Where are the educator voices? You know, why aren't they being included in some of these conversations? What is the impact going to be on their own livelihoods and their classrooms? That I think is worth exploring.
There have been some areas of strong disagreement between Democrats and progressives in the legislature and the Republican governor, namely on rolling back universal school meals to save money and over how much public money would flow to independent schools in the future. Expect debate to ramp up on the issue of school choice and many other details of the transformation proposal when lawmakers return to the State House from the town meeting day break. For NBC5 In Depth, I'm Jack Thurston.